We are recording. So, welcome everyone to episode 6 of the Confident Carnivore podcast. Today, we're super lucky to have one of our friends from MeatRx. His name is Rich Hall. Hi, Rich.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Glad to be here.
Nice to see you. Thank you for joining the show. And just to tell you a little bit about Rich, he is what I like to think of as the OG, the original gangster of the carnivore diet. He has been on carnivore for over 20 years. And in our MeatRx meetings, we're always sort of admiring Rich. And the other day we were in a meeting and everyone says, I want to be rich. And I'm like, I want to be rich too. But what we meant was we wanted to be rich, as in Rich Hall, our MeatRx friend. So I'm actually so excited to hear his story today because I didn't know it until he sent some of his story in a written form to me. And I was actually shocked to read it because I had no idea. You just see Rich every day and you think, oh my gosh, he's like the pinnacle of health and vitality and he's ripped. And so you think, oh, this guy was never suffering from any health condition before. He's just like genetically blessed. So we're going to learn today that that's not true. He did come through his own health journey and he's going to share that with us. So before we get started with speaking with Rich, I'm just going to share my screen so you can get a sense of what I mean when we say that Rich hasn't always been the beacon of health. So here's Rich looking like he looks today, but sorry, I went the wrong way in time. So let's start here. How old were you here, Rich?
I think I was about 23, 24 years old there. That was, yeah.
Wow.
Not a pretty time. And I was probably, I don't know what I weighed there, maybe 225, 235. I wasn't definitely nowhere near my biggest, but, clothes aren't flattering. And it was definitely, definitely heading in the wrong direction there.
It's just so unbelievable. Like I said, I was so shocked that I could barely even recognize that this was Rich. So, okay. And here's another one.
And that was probably about 1996, 97, just after my son was born. And I was about 285 pounds there.
Wow. And how tall are you, Rich?
I'm 5'11".
Okay. So you're tall, but you were a big guy, huh?
I didn't think 5'11" was very tall. and that's actually right after I had started, low carb. So that was, I think early 2000, maybe late 99. So I was probably a couple months in and was down about 25 pounds there. So I was about 260, 265 still, but I had already started, eating a low carb meat-based diet,
Wow.
at that point there.
Okay. And then your son there, how old do you think he is in the picture?
He was just turned 4.
Oh, what a cutie. And here you are again.
That was the same trip.
Oh.
So,
Who's
yeah,
that? Who's that holding with you? Is that like Grimace?
Baloo. That's Baloo, the bear, Baloo from Jungle Book.
Baloo?
And we got about the same belly.
Okay.
The main character in Jungle Book.
That's hilarious. And then, of course, here we have the Rich that we all know.
Probably just about 2 years ago, probably just a few months after going 100% carnivore.
Wow. A few months in? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, that was the full carnivore, back in 2019.
Right.
Not when I was, I still, as we'll get into more, but when I was, mostly meat-based for all those other years, it took a while to get down. That was a slow process, but this was 2019, early 2019.
So you're 100% animal-based here then?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. And then look at me. Oh my goodness.
That was the day you asked me for the pics. 2 days. That's 2 days ago.
Incredible. I mean, you are insanely ripped. These are just the best photos.
That one's from about 7-8 years ago.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So that was when I was 95% carnivore.
Interesting.
meat based. I never, it was low. To me, it's always been low carb is what or keto,
Right.
because I never heard of carnivore. I didn't even call it meat based till recently. I think Dr. Baker put something on Instagram about using the term meat based. And so that's what I've been using now. But, I didn't know any of that stuff. I wasn't on YouTube. I'm old, 51. So
well, you don't look old.
I didn't go on, I wasn't on YouTube. I wasn't, if I was on social media, it was to post pictures of my son or something.
Wow, and I'm definitely going to want to ask you, if you're eating the pretty much meat-based for over 20 years, I'm going to, when it wasn't even known, I'm definitely going to want to ask you what people thought of that. So here you said when you talk about the 5%, what other things were you eating?
Mostly vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, mushrooms, which I guess technically aren't vegetables, but I consider, that was,
Right.
those are the main ones. More salads. It was, when I started out, I don't know, you want to get into how I got to that point?
Well, we'll get into it. So I was just curious, but yeah, we'll talk about
but
it.
that's the majority of it
Okay, so it's not like you were eating like bread and like chocolate. You were eating vegetables.
Not on a normal
5%.
basis. No, every once every few months, maybe I had a meal or two or whatever. But yeah,
okay, so some like cheat meals, but not on the regular.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and then here you're looking fabulous.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, that was probably the week I converted my wife to carnivore, which was June. We were in Maui. That was June of 2019. So that's 6 months into carnivore for me, full 100%. And the week I got her to, she didn't buy any vegetables at Costco. When we go on our vacations, we're always hiking, and we find a gym to work out at every morning before we head out to hike. And so we bought just ribeyes and New York strips and grilled and took them with us. And that was when we, and that's when I kind of converted her.
I love it. I cannot wait to hear more about the conversion and what she said and what happened to her. And then we can also talk about travel and what you eat, like you just said. This is the picture we know Rich best by, I believe.
Yeah. And that's I think just about 6 months ago, or I don't know when that is. 6 months, a year ago, somewhere within the last year.
Wow.
And of course, it's a good angle,
It is.
It's a good angle. I just, I don't have very many pictures, but yeah.
It's a great angle. And also just seeing your veins popping out, it's just like, oh my God.
I mean, that's definitely at my best for sure,
I'll say. And then here's your beautiful wife. What is her name?
What's that?
What's your wife's name?
Leah. And she was on MeatRx. She signed up the other day. She was on there Saturday.
Oh.
And she was talking to Dr. Baker then, and so some people got to see her, and then she did one of the groups. So she's kind of checking it out. I told her maybe
is this her first carnivore trip then? This is the same week, that trip?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, she already ate, she ate a lot leaner, a lot more vegetables, but still a lot of protein, animal protein and stuff, just a lot leaner meats before that.
Okay.
When we met, she ate that way, too. So it's been years that she's ate what most people would consider a healthier diet. Still mostly whole food, but a lot less protein, no red meat.
Right.
Before that.
Wow, interesting. We'll have to hear more about that, but she looks great. Obviously, you guys are very active, so. And this is a beautiful picture from that same trip then, huh?
No, this is 1 year ago, our last trip to Kauai. We go to Kauai, like we were going to Kauai about once every 6-7 months since we right before we got married, and we got married there too. But
so
not this trip,
100%
but
carnivore here. And
that was in March of 2000, right before everything shut down.
Okay. So that's so sweet. You got married there, and you love such a magical place there, huh?
We like our trips to Hawaii. We stay active and just be outside.
Well, I love that when I saw what you guys are up to, that you're so active, you do all these adventurous things. And so, I mean, that's kind of the theme of Confident Carnivore, is living this life of freedom and adventure. And you two really clearly embody that. And so let's just talk about, okay, so first of all, can you just tell us how old you are?
I'm 51.
Wow, 51. You certainly don't look 51.
Oh,
And
thanks.
so we kind of know a bit of already that you've been meat-based for over 20 years. But where did you start? So what were you like? What did
Hmm.
you eat when you were younger and kind of
Okay. Well, growing up, I probably didn't eat, my mom cooked a lot. So we still had plenty of, at least for dinner, we always had meat with our meal, but, plenty of all the other stuff, pasta and all that. I probably ate cereal for breakfast most days with more milk and stuff. And that'll make a couple of people on MeatRx laugh because of my take on dairy. But, but, that was when I was in high school and I ate so for lunches, and, when you get to the, go to school and you're getting the school lunches, you're limited in what they had even then, it's even worse now, but so I ate, the standard stuff, but we didn't eat out much. So I didn't have, so like I said, for dinner, we always had pretty, always had meat and stuff. And I stayed in good shape, but I was young, and I wrestled, I played football at a pretty high level, and even in junior high, I was in I was in at least one sport every season, sometimes two sports,
oh,
I played basketball, I wrestled, played football, track, I ran, all kinds of stuff. And then, after I got out of high school, I kind of got burned out. And I was going to play, I thought about playing college football or wrestling and just got burned out for a little while. And then it was a year off where I didn't go to school. And that's when I was drinking all the time and, eating horribly. I had a decent job and making money, but with no expenses.
mhm.
And so that's when I first started getting with just fast food all the time, and drinking almost every day.
Wow.
And that's when I started kind of gaining weight. And then I started school and I was putting myself through school. So of course I had limited money. So I was buying the cheap, ramen noodles and, all that. And I tried to have meat, but I didn't eat it, as much because I just didn't have the money plus, but I always seemed to have money for plenty of beer and all that. So then I just each year was great. And then, when I was 20, I thought about trying to wrestle again. But I just could never get myself motivated enough by then to even get myself in the shape I needed to be in to try it. And it just, I'd go back and forth and stuff until and then through college I gained, but I was, that first picture you showed, that's probably, right after I was done with school, right before I moved here to Arizona.
Mhm.
And that was, I grew up in Ohio. And we, so I was just gradually each year gaining 5-10 pounds and just getting bigger. And I realized I was that big, in my mind, I didn't look like that. Even,
Oh,
unless I saw a picture, and it didn't seem like people thought the way they talked to me and the way they described, they never thought I was as heavy or, all that.
huh.
And then by the time I moved to Arizona, I was probably about 245 and I was still eating pretty poorly. And then when I moved here, I found my uncle had a friend that was had played semi-pro football.
Mhm.
So I joined them and I was playing linebacker, and which is a pretty active position. And I was still able to do that even at that size, which is pretty big. And I just kept, over the next couple of years, I was playing at a high level. And I was sore all the time, tired, but I still could do that. So I just tell myself I'm fine,
Mhm.
Once in a while, I'm like everybody else. I look in the mirror and I'm like, I don't like this, but it was never, I would try to lose a little bit. I'd get into some kind of low fat type of stuff and maybe lose a few pounds and go to the gym for a month or two. And then I'd lose interest again or get,
Mhm.
and just spiral back and forth, but not making any real progress. And then right around let's see, was it, and as you see in those ones, I was about 285.
Wow.
And I think it was in 1998 that I really finally got strict, but I was eating a low fat, higher carb, still pretty high, what most people would consider high protein, about 200 grams of protein a day, which was, kind of my goal weight. at that time, or actually I'd have been happy at 225. I thought that's like most people. We're all, when we're overweight, we think our look good weight is about 30 or 40 pounds than what it really is. Somebody says, man, I know if I get down, a guy says, I get down, they're 285, 300 pounds. If I get down to 225, I'm gonna look great. Well, we're probably wrong. I was wrong. But when I did that, I stayed strict for most of that year, sticking to that way, but I didn't feel good. My energy wasn't good. I was always hungry, but I did lose about, 80 pounds.
Wow.
And, but at that time they did this body weight, you do your muscle test. It was like you submerged into water. I can't remember what it was called, and then I did it again when I got down to that, and I lost quite a bit of muscle, and I didn't feel good, and kind of bummed me out. I went back to just eating fast food twice a day.
Wow.
At minimum twice a day. I grabbed breakfast at McDonald's every day, a couple of sausage McMuffin with egg, 2 hash browns, a large Coke, and I gained it all right back within 3 months. I was back up to 285. It took me a year to get it off, took 3 months to put it back on.
Oh my
God. And so then, and then finally, I was going through a divorce. I knew I was going to be raising my son pretty much by myself. I was tired. But I really just didn't like the way I looked. I'm not going to, I didn't feel like in the bio, which I didn't have any health issues. My blood stuff, everything was great.
Huh.
I didn't think I was unhealthy in any way. Besides, but I was obese. But at that time, I didn't think anything except for I wanted to look better.
Right.
That was my driving, more than anything. Yeah, I felt tired, but I figured I was just being lazy. But it was just before my son turned 3, and going through a divorce, and I knew he was going to be living with me pretty much full time. So I needed more energy. I wanted to feel better. I wanted to be more active for him. So, and I found this called the Anabolic Diet. And it's by this doctor in Canada. He's a power lifter, Dr. Pasquale. It's kind of like a low carb, cyclical type diet, where you're eating, you get fat adapted, but it's whole food based. And then you would carb load once you got fat adapted 1 or 2 days on the weekend, which I didn't feel good doing that part of it. So I adapted it to myself, where I just did away with the carbs for most of the time. So I was just eating, that, and the 5-10%, depends on how you want to look at it. I'd have some vegetables back then. I didn't really like most vegetables, any vegetables really. I'd eat canned. All my vegetables that I had were more like a little bit extra fillers. So I would have, canned green beans or mushrooms or what else did I have? I mean, that was the majority of it, because I just didn't like vegetables. I didn't eat salads. I didn't, and most of it, and I stayed more in the moderate to lower fat at that time. So I would have eggs every day. And I did for, the first 19 years, I probably had 6 to 12 eggs every single day. Wow. Even on a cheat day, I'd still have that many eggs every day. That was almost automatic but I would switch up the carb, or my animal proteins. For a while it was chicken breast or chicken thighs. I would maybe add a little bit of sausage or red meat. For a while I'd have some bacon with my eggs, and then, or super lean ground beef. Back then at Whole Foods, you could get like a 95% lean, because I hated lean turkey and stuff. That stuff, it just, to me, is still horrible. Now I don't worry about lean, obviously, but I did that. And what I would do is, because I'd be such a, I could just stay consistent. I would measure out what I wanted to eat for a day, and I would just cook that every day, and I would eat that for months and months and months.
And did you feel satiated because you're eating so lean?
I would eat at that time, unlike now, I was eating, what I thought was the way you should eat, and a bodybuilding type of eating still was 6 meals a day.
Okay. Whoa.
but I was high protein. I've been, even now I still and then 300 to 350 grams of protein a day, which now is about 1.5 to 2 pounds, 2 grams per pound of body weight for me. Then, so when I started that, I got down pretty quick and I felt great. I had more energy. My workout stayed consistent. I was going to the gym uh, 5 times a week that first year. And then I did, after that first year, I did have my son completely full time. So I couldn't get to the gym. So I built a gym at the house. So, with having a young kid, and then luckily I'm a morning person. That's when I've always worked out. My main workouts have always been. So I built a home gym so I could work out and he'd be sleeping, and then I could get him ready for school while I was finishing up my workouts, or daycare. I put him in preschool when he was 4.
Wow.
So we'd do that, get him ready, do my workout, get him up, get him ready, make all my food and stuff, and do all that. And that's how I went for, quite a few years. But the first year I lost that 80 pounds again, but I felt great. And I stayed around 205. And then during football season, I would ease up just a slight bit because I always felt like I needed to play at a little bit of heavier weight. And, I was still 30, 31 years old. So I played football those first couple of years, my early 30s, at like 225, right around there. So the only difference was I would still eat during the week the same way, but I'd be, on the game day, I'd let myself get some fast food to grab just because we were running, and I'd get that for him too, and dragging him to the games. I mean, he liked hanging out there for a while anyway. So then we did all that. And let's see. And so I did that for a while, and then I would, but I didn't feel better. But it didn't it didn't register, So, but that's how I would, just that little bit of cheating on the weekend would keep my weight up just a little bit higher. And then once season was over, I would go right back to no cheating, back down. And for the first couple of years, my low would be about 205.
Okay.
And I would do that. And then it seemed like every few years, my base weight would drop another 5 pounds. So I was like 200. I'd stay pretty consistent around 200. I may have gotten down to 195 for a few days just because I used to try to get like as lean as I could right before my birthday, especially as I got close to 40. I'd want to post a picture at 40, at 41, this is how lean. And I did that more as I got done, probably not as much in the early 30s because there wasn't anywhere to, to show it off anyway. Back then, I don't think I was, I don't even know if Facebook existed, but I wasn't on it. So, but so each year, and then, into my 40s, I stayed more consistent with it. But again, it was 6 meals a day. I would supplement some whey protein and stuff, but I didn't do a lot of other stuff, anything else. And there was, which at the time I thought was a great thing. I did a netter type sometime there in my early 30s. I don't remember exactly when. There was this thing that was called a velocity diet. And it's still super low carb, but it was almost all protein shakes.
Oh.
4 meals a day of protein shakes, a blend of different kind of protein in one mix. And then the last protein, you would have flaxseed and peanut butter. And I was so hungry, it was just delicious. And it was 28 days. And I looked it up yesterday because I was trying to remember exactly how it was set up because it was so long ago. And I thought it would get me down just that little bit more, that I'm always fighting for. And so what you did is you did that every day. And then on Sunday, you would have one whole food meal. And I would have steak and vegetables. And me and my son would go out somewhere, and I would just get steak and vegetables and then eventually a salad. Well, I never got as lean as I thought I would eating that for 28 days, but it was funny. There was 1 or 2 people on this thing that had already done it, and they had mentioned that they started craving vegetables.
Weird.
And I'm like, there's no way, because I hate broccoli. I hated salads. I never had a burger with the lettuce on it. I never ate any of that. I never liked it. My mom would try to make me eat it, and I would get sick, whether it was mental or what. I could not eat. Well, it worked. I mean, I started eating, and now I don't think that's such a positive, but then with everything you're told, it would be. So I'd have, now I ate salads, and I'd have some broccoli and cauliflower and asparagus, and and that canned stuff, just fresh, steamed. And so that was, I added that in, that was still my small percentage. And I still only had, a few servings, obviously, if I'm only having, because most of the time I count those as my carbs. So those are my 20 grams of carbs that I have in a day at the most. So that was one thing that happened with that. But I never got as lean as, you would think you would, just eating protein shakes. And I never did it again. But but it did help me with that at the time, which obviously now is no more issue because I don't have to eat this. At least I don't. It seems that way. Well, you never know. Things could change, but I can't imagine how. But
so how did you? I know that you mentioned that it was something to do with your son that caused you to look for more than what you
yeah,
what was already working for you pretty well.
yeah. So yeah, and I did. I felt pretty good. I thought, I was doing perfect because I've always been, my opinion, there might be slight differences in this, but most of us don't need any carbs.
Right.
Even if you can have a cheat meal and feel all right, which I did, and I didn't, after a while, these last few years, well, not the last 2 years, but before that, I could feel, it was almost like a hangover. The same reason that I stopped drinking was why I've given up even the occasional trip to the fast food or the buffet, or I don't want to feel that way.
The carb coma.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. You get a headache and you don't feel right for a day, or at least. And some people, it's much worse. Somebody like me who doesn't have any of these, some of these other issues, I think I do okay, but it still doesn't feel good. It's still not, so, but yeah, so by this time, I'm down pretty lean, like you've seen some pictures, and I, even some of the older ones. In my 40s, I stayed pretty consistently about 185 to 195, close to single digit body fat.
Wow.
But what was happening is my son, who actually has had migraines since he was 5, and they would get bad at times. And actually, I looked at a few things here and there when you looked at diet stuff back then. It was more avoid certain things like MSG and all that, I didn't see anything on, and he was just, a pretty active kid. And when he didn't have migraines, he moved well and he was lean. And so I didn't mess with his diet. I didn't have him eat the way I ate. And, we kind of ate different and at different times sometimes, especially as he got older. And his friends, a couple of his friends were at my house all the time after school. They went there, and were there till their parents got off of work and picked them up and all that. So they were eating whatever, I'd buy them stuff that was quick and easy, which was probably horrible for them. But we tried to get the MSG out and felt like that helped. But looking back now, and I could have probably done so much to help them, but it just didn't register. So, it's one thing I, would want to emphasize, if you've got young kids and you have conditions, the odds are they may conditions if you don't, yeah, we don't want to, totally make them carnivore, maybe, or maybe they can't, I don't know. But it would have helped him immensely even back then. Like, his one medicine that worked for him the best is that in smaller doses, but in a bigger dose, it's an epilepsy medicine.
Oh.
Which should have, I knew what keto, where I knew that, but it just never registered to me that maybe this type of diet. Of course, the doctors never recommended any kind of diet stuff. So we didn't really do much with that. And so he dealt with that, he'd go, sometimes he'd do well. But as he got into high school, and the doctor said, a lot of times with teenagers, with boys, when they hit puberty, it could get really bad. And then a lot of times it'll go away. Well, that didn't happen. It got worse.
Oh.
And it stayed worse. And then he wasn't feeling good. His stomach was bothering him. He finally admitted to me that and this was, he was what, 18, 19 by then, stomach was bothering him. His mood was not good. I think he was feeling kind of depressed, and wasn't sure if it was just because he was having a hard time getting going, but he just was not feeling good. He didn't know how to express it or how to tell me. And so finally we went to the doctor and, got him some blood work and stuff, and his B12 was very low.
Oh.
So, not to but lower than it should be for a 19-year-old, So they thought maybe Crohn's. So we went to the specialist and they did some tests, and that's what he said it was. And of course, they gave him some medication. I asked the doctor about diet. This is an older guy, not, doctor, and he said, no, there's nothing diet-wise you can do. So we did the, we did the pills and, whatever, I don't remember what they were and stuff. So that was like a year of that, and it didn't really help.
Yeah.
And that's when I started doing more of a dive into just trying to find some other stuff. And then I found, a few different things, on migraines and Crohn's, some people that had some stories on the carnivore diet. And there was a lady who we just had on the Meat RX. I can't remember her name.
Oh, the redheaded
Albright,
Yeah.
Dr. Albright. I don't think she's a doctor, but she was on the HBO, Sean's old podcast, HBO podcast. And I saw that and read some other stuff. And then some stuff from Amber O'Hearn on her. I had all these different things that people were doing well on.
Wow.
And then I just started watching a ton of other stuff, Kevin Stock, who related to me, which got me towards it, but for all those different things. And so I kept thinking, I asked Brandon about what he thought about trying something like this. And what I did was, Amber O'Hearn she has this one page that just had the description and all the foods you could eat, and just to start. And I just printed that out and gave it to him. I said, look at this, one page. And basically he just started eating ground beef. Within a month, his stomach was better. His migraines cleared up, and he was just doing really, really well.
Oh my.
And he did that, for a couple of years, just staying with ground beef, maybe eating a little bit of eggs here and there, but just ground beef, maybe a little taco seasoning stuff. And he's doing well. And now, well, he was still having a hard time finding a job and stuff. And he decided he needed a change of scenery. So it was, wonderful that his mom was there for him now, as an adult, which is perfect. I mean, I tried to make sure that they always at least communicated and had a good relationship. And so he decided to move out there just for a change.
Yeah.
And he's doing well working and stuff, but he's still, he's still a young kid. He wants to do certain things. And I think he tells me he's mostly following it, but I think he's still, he's at that age where he's back and forth. And so, but he sounds like he's not, the stomach stuff still seems to be doing well. And it sounds like he mostly eats, ground beef and more carnivore and adding some steaks here and there. But he's still doing other things he shouldn't. And I think sometimes he's afraid to tell me too. So I'm not there, so I don't know exactly. But I just tell him, how you felt, because you saw what I did in my 20s, but I also didn't have his health conditions. I didn't have, so it's hard for me to understand how he just doesn't do it. But then again, I might not have either, because, he doesn't drink like I did and party and, live completely on fast food, but he's doing, pretty well with it. But, and that's when I started him, I'm like, I'm already close to doing this. Minus, I obviously wasn't eating anywhere near the red meat. I'd have maybe at that time when I made the switch, I might have had 8 ounces of ground beef with my eggs. Right. And I was eating chicken thighs and legs, so and pork chops and stuff. So, not super lean, but still pretty, which most people would consider moderate low fat.
Right.
With the slight bit of vegetables. And so then I decided to do it 2 at the same time. So this was January of 2019. So, a little over 2 years ago is when I went 100%. Wow. And that first month I gave up all my, the whey protein, all that stuff. And And I was doing, I wasn't doing a ton of that anyway. I was still getting most of my protein from animal sources. So that first month, I still couldn't wrap, I was never believed in intermittent fasting and all that stuff. So even just going from 6 meals to 3 meals to me seemed against everything I knew for the bodybuilding end of it.
Right.
And even health, they were always telling you, even though I'd never listened, I knew carbs didn't work for me. I those 6 meals, but they were all smaller meals. But so I so that first I was still eating eggs and ground beef for breakfast, a bunch of chicken thighs for lunch, and then I started having steak for dinner, which steak was never a main part of my eating, just because that was just not what you thought of for a bodybuilding type. Not that I was ever going to compete anything, but it was always about wanting to look a certain way.
Right.
And so I did that for about a month, and then it just automatically just converted to a pound of ground beef at noon and steaks for dinner, and then on the weekends ribeyes, 1 or 2 meals a day. And that's what I've been pretty much doing ever since. And then the last month I've switched to just all steaks. So
Wow.
eat 2 or 3 steaks, depending on, and I don't weigh them anymore. I mean, the ground beef, I always kind of weighed it just to grab an amount to bring to work. And it was convenient. So I would a pound cooked of just ground beef, not a burger or anything, just ground beef in a bowl. And that's what I ate. And I like that. It was convenient, but now I figured I just switched to completely steaks. And I did over those first year and a half, I'd mix in some eggs once in a while and maybe a little sardines and stuff, but it's just been mostly steaks and 2 meals a day. And I would have never,
I'm on
I,
all steaks too, so I love it. It's music to my ears.
I remember when you were in a meeting with Brett, a month or 2 ago, and you were weren't sure where you were at with it, and all these, and I've never been a fan of substitutions for anything.
Right.
Luckily when I started, there was really wasn't keto. There definitely wasn't anything on a shelf that said keto on it. There was some Atkins stuff, but there wasn't a ton of packaged stuff to even draw me in.
Right.
To even thinking about doing it. And, if I felt like back then, if I felt like I wanted something, I just had it and then went back, which I could do. In my 20s, I couldn't do. I would always, because I hear people, some people can have a little bit and then go back and be fine. I'm not that person either, really. I mean, I could, but why? I always felt like if I had one cookie, what's the point?
Right.
One cookie? Is it really worth it? So when I did back in the day when I would wanted to have something, I went all out. But in my 20s, that meant, my diet was done. I go back eating crap for months and months and months. Once I finally got to the low carb, I was able to, make it like a meal or a weekend or maybe on vacation.
Interesting.
And then I go right back to it. No problem. But I still always crave that stuff. It's not like it wasn't there, and it was always in my house. But if I told myself I wasn't having it, even if I had it there for my son, somehow I was able to just not have it. But the minute I said, okay, I went crazy.
Right. I'm
That
like
day,
that
and then I
too.
go back to it.
It's
That's how I was.
floodgates open and you just, right. So I totally hear you. I'm the same way. I'm kind of an abstainer. I like to stick to the simplicity. It doesn't require any thought, or you just free up your whole mind to not have to focus on the food. So
Yeah.
but I want to know so you mentioned that you went gradually from the ground beef and a little couple of, and then you ended up on steaks. So can you say more about like kind of why that ended up happening and how your performance changed or any results you got
Um,
switching to steak?
well, should start with, like, obviously you guys have seen the pictures. I was lean when I started, in good shape. I was working out, felt great. I didn't really feel like I had any major issues or stuff. Just I thought were normal life things. So even eating those 3 meals and having chicken and the eggs and all that, in that first month, my allergies went away. I'd wake up every morning stuffed up, and I would take these, little, whatever you call them, Benadryl pills and clear up my head. And within a month, that went away. My joint, I had, I've been lifting weights since I was little. I've been playing football and wrestling since I was 8 years old. So lots of wear and tear on the body. I played, semi-pro football till I was 43 years old at a high level. I wasn't, so I just assumed, and with all the lifting, I was always going to have shoulder issues and elbow and joint, and those were just things I had to live with. And just losing that little bit of vesicles, and I don't know whether it's that, the additional red meat, whatever, it's probably a combination, I don't know. But all those joint pains and which, especially the shoulder thing. I've had shoulder issues since I was in high school. And I dislocated my shoulder once, and I wrestled with one still because I was too stupid to just not do it and go to the doctor. And I just didn't tell anybody. I just kept going. Popped it back in, and I dislocated my elbow in a game when I was 38, and just popped it back in and played a week later. And so those things, you figure that, the issues of me being kind of stupid for playing through those things and just the wear and tear, I just figured that's just going to be my norm. Well, it's not. It went away.
Wow.
The joint pain in 3 weeks, and it has not returned. And like I said, I would have never thought that I would go to intermittent fasting. To me, was a joke, and I don't force it. I still have a hard time hearing people talk about 48-hour fasts, and I still think I need more protein, especially as I'm getting older. I still think protein is important, but everybody's a little different. But I think the differences are not as big as people think. So but I eat when I'm hungry still, for the most part. I mean, we're still kind of on a schedule during the week because of work and stuff, but I'm hungry. If I wasn't hungry at dinner, I wouldn't have whatever I have, and I stop when I've had enough. And so after that first month, I went 2 meals a day with the ground beef, and I just decided to try. I don't know if there's a big difference over this last few weeks, just all steaks, but it's definitely, I still feel really good, and I think I might stick with it, unless, sometimes it's a little cheaper to have the ground beef, but no, and the performance, I guess my workouts even got better. And when I met my wife, we met at the gym, about a little over 7 years ago. And I'd go 5-6 times a day, or a week, to work out early morning, and hit it pretty good, and always felt great. But I just, and as we got to know each other, we started just going 7 days a week. And part of it was just at the beginning was to see each other. We kept just showing up at the gym so we see each other. That's just getting to know each other, and then we'd end up on the Stairmaster for an hour just talking, and which was probably silly, but it was, and we did all that and always felt good. But I found that I think, that first 6 months I was eating more, 99, but I eat less often, but I was eating probably 1,000 more calories with the fat, because the fat went up, about 500 to 1,000, depending on the day, depending if I was having ribeyes or not. But the protein was still pretty high, about a 1-to-1 ratio calorie wise.
Right.
And that's where I'm at now. But like I said, I don't track it, but I have a pretty good idea from all the years of tracking where I'm at. But the working out completely fasted and not worrying about meal timing, like I don't think if I was hungry after I got done working out, I'd eat, but I'm not, so I don't eat till later. I feel like I recover faster. We can go, we work out, 2.5 hours every single morning. I don't know that I don't think it's necessary. We just love doing it. It's what we do, you know,
And
we
so
love it.
are you exercising? This is a big question I always ask people. Are you exercising because you have the energy? I mean, I know you enjoy it, but I think I've asked you this question on Meet RX before about what percentage of your results, looking super cut and being lean and in great shape and vitality, what percentage is diet and what percentage is exercise? Because people are going to say,
No,
well, you work out 7 days a week or
I
5 days
know.
a week, and they're going to automatically assume you only look that good because you're running on the treadmill, you know, you're pumping iron. They're going to not think it's because of diet that you're lean and healthy, you know?
Of course, I've changed the way my body looks. The weightlifting definitely helps with adding muscle, but without all that protein, it wouldn't happen. But to me, fat loss, weight loss is to me, it's, I always say 100%, maybe it's 99.9% is about diet.
Wow.
I mean, it doesn't matter what you look like if you got a bunch of fat on you. Because, I mean, you know, I was thinking, you know, back, you know, our first couple of vacations that Leah and I took, you know, we'd leave for those vacations usually in my best shape, you know, and back the first couple was when we would allow ourselves to eat a little easier during our vacations. But our vacations are way more active than our regular life, even, you know,
Right.
because we can't go hiking and biking and kayaking every single day because we just don't have enough time there's just not enough hours in the day.
Right.
So, like I said, when we get up in the morning, we go to the gym on vacation. We work out a couple hours, come home, shower, maybe have some breakfast, eat whatever. And then we'd head somewhere to go on a 5-10 mile hike. Do that for, you know, a while and sightsee and just be going, and we'd be in the beach and hitting the water, and then we come back and eat again, and we go out to eat somewhere. And we did that every single day. So we're totally active. It's not like we were sitting around or just laying on the beach. We're not laying on, we tried to lay on the beach and we last like 10 minutes and then we're finding something else to go do. And even though we're that active, a little bit of just that dieting, I'd always still come back probably 10 pounds heavier.
Wow.
So right there tells me that, you know, diet is most important, even no matter how hard you work. It matters. Eating the right things. And don't get me wrong, some of that may have been water weight, and I could, you know, but it'd still take me a couple of weeks to get back to where I was at, you know, and I go right back and right back to it and get
what,
right back
I
down.
mean, that is such a great, just really, you know, explicit, like you tested it, you know, it was diet, right? But what
But
about cardio? You mentioned the treadmill. So for
well,
those who
I
don't
I
like
I
cardio,
well, my main workout is I go out, I've got a max trainer that's it's kind of like a mix between an elliptical and a stairmaster. And I do a 20-minute warm up, and I call it a warm up, but I'm probably, you know, in 20 minutes, I'm doing about 3 miles. So I'm going at a pretty good pace. But for me, I think I've always felt like the warmer I get, the stronger I am in my workout. So now, since we built our home gym, you know, I do that. And I used to do elliptical to warm up or whatever. I do different things, jump rope, all whatever. Because I like to do that 20-minute warm up. And most people would call that cardio.
Mhm.
And then I'd lift for a couple hours. I do mainly bodybuilding type stuff, high volume, but I mix in some dynamic stuff, explosive stuff, and I've been doing it even more and more. And I've been mixing in some strength stuff, which I've done, you know, at different times. My workout never stays the same. You know, I switch it up. You know, in my early 40s, I was doing some more heavy stuff, closer to what people see Dr. Baker doing now and stuff, more of that. And but still, I've always been more bodybuilding than performance.
Mhm.
And but I'm trying to do more and more of that as I get older, because I've been thinking about, you know, every time I see, you know, like Dr. Baker, now he's doing jujitsu and he was doing the rowing. And I'm thinking, well, you know, I finally stopped playing football at 43, you know, so I don't have that competitive thing anymore. And I don't know if I need it or not. that I've been thinking about training for CrossFit or doing. So I mix in a little bit of that right now, and I've been playing around with it to see if anything catches. And right now it's just the fun of doing the variety.
Mhm.
I do that for about 2 hours, every day. I do a 5-day split hitting all the body parts. And I just repeat that. And I don't take a day off, but that's because I don't feel like I need it. If I got a day where I was tired, I would take it off. And my wife does once in a while. She'll, one morning she'll be like, and she hasn't really, since Carnivore, really hasn't felt that really either. She might have done it once actually. We
Wow.
just
So
have even more energy.
have the energy. It's
It
just
is for sure. As much as we love it,
by
yes,
what you're eating, then having that energy. And so
it
cardio, it
does.
sounds like you use it maybe mainly more to warm up your muscles, just
Yeah.
not as like a
And then,
sustained calorie burning endeavor, right?
yeah. Yeah. And then I finish my workout with another, usually it depends. Now I do a little bit, I'll do some sprints after, maybe some, high intensity interval stuff. I've got, the Concept 2 rower. I've got a Rogue Echo bike, which is, one of those fan bikes or whatever they call them. So I do some sprint stuff on that, jump rope after. And sometimes I'll do some steady state. We've got a step mill, Stairmaster thing. I'll do another 20 minutes after of that sometimes. And then, so I usually do 20 minutes before, 10 to 20 minutes after, depending whether I'm doing sprints or just steady state cardio.
Wow.
And that's when, and so my workouts end up being about 2 hours and 40 minutes now.
My goodness.
And we get up at 3:30 to do that.
3:30?
And I couldn't,
I was worried about our 7 o'clock interview time. I guess I didn't need to be worried.
I started my workout a little bit earlier so I could get here to,
Wait,
because
so
I would,
you get up at 3:30. What time do you go to sleep? Like how much sleep do you get a night?
I 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours. We go to bed pretty early, but I get up long before that 3:30. But I can't. My wife sleeps and needs more sleep than I do.
Okay.
So we usually, we're older. We don't have kids to worry about or any of that stuff. So our life, we start early and we go to bed early. We're
Right.
usually in bed by 7.
Wow. You guys are
I'll be up just.
super primal.
Well, that's just that's where we're at. Because that's just kind of the schedule we ended up on.
Wow.
So I wake up usually about 1:30, 2 o'clock, and I'll do some, I'll read or watch TV for a couple hours, and that's kind of my time there. And then at 3:30, I'll get her up or go, see her, and then we'll, I like to, I've always liked to shower before I work out to, really loosen up and then do my warm up. So I'm out there by 4:15 to start working out, and then I finish a little after 7 usually,
and then you go to work too, right?
and then I come to work.
Oh my goodness.
And then sometimes now we go, we usually go for a hike, kind of our, active rest. It kind of takes us into the week. It's almost like meditation, really. Yeah. We've got the mountains right up, right across the street. We've got the mountains that we can hike in. So that's, wonderful for us. We usually do that just to kind of relax and unwind for the weekend. And then on the weekends, we do more hikes, some longer hikes, and harder hikes and kayaking and biking. We bought bikes right before the shutdown last year. I used to like the bike a lot. Leah hadn't, and she found out she liked it. So we do that. We've got a couple of places we can go do 20-mile bike rides, and sometimes we go to fast pace and sometimes we go to moderate. But again, that stuff's more just being out and enjoying the weather and being outside. I don't totally think of that as our exercise part. That's more, that's more for the mind, I think.
Yeah.
But we have the energy to do that. And we go kayaking a lot. We've got a couple of kayaks, and so that's what we do on the weekends. We can't do as much of that during the week. By the time we get home from work and stuff, we've time to eat, grill some steaks, and by then it's like our bedtime.
Wow. That is just, talk about an action-packed and fun life and just having so much energy. And before we move on, I do want to hear about Leah and her switch to carnivore, but you had mentioned the joint pain, and you kind of said you weren't sure whether it was taking out the other non-beef or whether it was, so I want to ask you, what does your gut tell you about whether it was those foods actually not being good for you or whether they were actually pushing the beef off the plate, right? Because if you're eating other things, well, then you're not eating as
Yeah.
much beef, right? So what do you,
I think it was even just enough of the carbs between the vegetables and a little bit of almonds I was eating.
but the
I
other
think,
meats though, you know how you said
yeah,
you were still eating chicken and
yeah. And it may have been, it could have been a little bit of the chicken because yeah, I mean, not that chicken's bad. I mean, I would take that over the vegetables, but
right,
I don't know that it's the ideal, because it's harder to get, you know, I think, I'm not I don't do grass finished. I'm not worried, I think it might be better for the environment and all that stuff, but I prefer the grain finished beef, and I'm not all natural. And most of the time it's just little tweaks they make so they can name it a certain way.
right.
So, but I think it can make a little bit more difference in a chicken because it's such a small and the way its digestion is and all that. So I don't know. It could be a little bit of that, but I think it's more just getting rid of it really is probably getting rid of the vegetables, but I'm sure eating the beef more and almost completely beef, I'm sure that helps a
Okay.
big deal too. But like I said, I was still eating chicken thighs when that
Right.
joint pain went away, and I was still eating
Oh,
eggs every day.
okay, okay. So
So,
that wasn't,
so
but you just probably got more optimized when you went
yeah.
more beef, right?
Oh yeah. It was a whole nother. I mean, it's hard to describe because, like I said, I didn't go into this feeling like there was something that needed to improve. I'm like, I see, Dr. Baker in the way he was training, and Kevin Stock, he's all jacked and works out hard, and he, and all the stuff he was doing and the energy. And there was other guys too, you would see that were eating, and some of them were still eating kind of the same way I was. But I just saw those guys, and I could relate because Dr. Baker and I are close to the same age.
Right.
And Kevin's younger. I'm not sure how old he is, but it's just if these guys are doing it, and it's like, why not try it? And it really, as good as I felt, it was a whole new level of alertness. Even mentally, it's just more alert and just more energy. And we're already working out every day. I was
Right.
already, in the gym for two plus hours. And I didn't,
And for decades, it's not like you just started.
yeah, I wasn't just, and it wasn't like I was, being lazy at the gym or just going through the motions. I was working hard. I mean, it's funny at the gym when I was still going to the gym, getting asked by people my age or younger, what do you do? And then when I tell them, they kind of listen for a minute, and then I can't do that, or that can't be it, or, all that. And
Wow, so even in the muscle building power culture, they still are closed-minded to it then.
they all want their carbs and stuff, or, and it's like, and none of them, when they hear how old I was, they'd be like, really? And what do you do? And I said, this is what I do. And you always get even those guys, well, I can't do that. Or what about, long term? I've been doing this for 20 years. I mean, I think about, like, example, probably you had to deal with all those years, when you're eating plant-based or vegetarian, vegan, in your mind, you're eating healthy. And
Right.
everybody else thinks you're eating healthy too. Nobody's telling you really to change that, but you're
Exactly.
not feeling good. You're not feeling optimal. So you're thinking maybe there's something else. It can't be what I'm eating.
Right.
With me, I'm feeling great, but people are telling me you can't do this. It's not sustainable. It's not good for you. And
Well, and they think
of course it is.
you should be dead or that you should have scurvy,
Yeah.
right? That you should have had a heart attack like,
Yeah.
15, 20 years ago and that you should have scurvy or something terrible, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, I really want to hear your take on dairy because you mentioned earlier, and I don't think I've heard your full take on it, but I am very curious
Probably.
because I have kind of I guess my attitude toward dairy, and I include butter in that personally, but I
Yeah.
feel suspicious of dairy. So please tell me
Yeah.
your thoughts on dairy.
Yeah. First of all, when I talk about dairy. I don't usually have butter in mine.
Okay.
But I'm not, I don't, the only time I even use even butter is just rub the bottom of the pan if I'm making eggs, which I haven't done in a while, when I'm frying eggs, just so I'm not using some kind of spray or something. So I just even rub it. It's not like I even cut a chunk off and put it in the pan. I just take the thing and just do that, coat it. And but I still, dairy, when I think of dairy, I'm not thinking about butter.
Okay.
But I gave up dairy back then just because of the carbs, milk especially. And I did have some cheese here and there at times. I would make omelets, but not for a long period of time and not a lot. But to me, it was always about carbs.
Okay.
That's why I gave up milk. It's not like I never had an intolerance. I could probably drink all the milk I want. It's about weight gain. Mm-hmm. But I joke now all the time. I say, dairy's for vegetarians because they've got to get their protein, their animal protein somewhere, and they're willing to do yogurt and milk sometimes and that kind of stuff. So that's my joke,
I love it. That's a great t-shirt.
but I do believe if you're trying, you can overeat that stuff. So I mean, it's so calorie dense, and
do you think
milk
kind of addictive? Because I feel like people talk about, well, if you eat a lot of cheese or if I was using like heavy whipping cream or whole sour cream, right? Like extra fat. I would try to, at the beginning of carnivore, I was eating dairy, but trying to get low carb, like high dense cheeses and that kind of thing. But I always felt like it just got my appetite like going. And I'm just like,
exactly.
I want everything in sight then.
Well, that's part of the problem is, I think if you're having that stuff, it doesn't fill you up. So say you had that steak and some cheese, eating that cheese isn't going to have you eat less steak. But if you got rid of that cheese and just ate that steak, you're probably going to be fine. Now you just ate how many extra calories that you probably didn't even want. And it may even make you even hungrier and eat a little bit more steak or something else.
Yep.
And so maybe if you're trying to gain weight, maybe that'd be it, and I've always been, and I know everybody, and this is where the differences are. In all those years, I've never been an added fat person. So I didn't add any, all those low carb, I didn't add, every once in a great while, I might have had a little bit of vinegar and olive oil on the salad, but usually I just ate it with salt and pepper. And so I never really added any kind of fats to my diet besides what was in my protein. Even, so that's why I was lower a lot of times, because I was eating leaner meats and eggs and, but so I've never been, and I'm still not. I get the fat from the steak, and I try to get as fatty a steaks as I can. And I know men seem to do a little better with a higher protein, maybe moderate fat, and that's just the general rule. That's not everybody, of course. Right. And women seem to do a little bit better with higher fat. And so I'm learning more about how the differences, and from being on MeatRx, just hearing people, and especially with different health issues, those little differences, they do matter sometimes. Right. So, but yeah, I've never been, for me personally, I never added fat of any kinds to, anything. And I just think that's a better way to do it.
That's so.
And I think we got off with something else you were asking me.
No, that's exactly what I wanted you to share. It was super helpful. And I just.
Oh yeah, the cheese and dairy.
Well, I mean, I want to talk about Leah still, so let's not forget to talk about Leah, because I'm super curious. Because I mean, well, okay. The one thing I have been wondering though is you mentioned that when you were having weight issues, obviously, and that you didn't have as much energy when you were prior to low carb and then carnivore, and then you had the joint pain. But you said that you never had anything like, you didn't have anxiety or any kind of issues like that, depression, mood instability, none of that. Just like nothing other than just your physical manifestation of weight, joint pain, and lower energy. That's it. Wow. Interesting. Because you hear everybody, if they have all those like physical inflammation things, then they'll have something like, some negative outlook or all. So
Yeah,
your mind
just
and your attitude have been pretty much the same the whole time then.
yeah. I mean, besides maybe a little dysmorphia about how I look, you know, but I still have that. You know, I still I see those pictures, and I still not as much. We do much better. Leah and I both have that. You know, we want to look a certain way still,
Right.
but we're less and less as we get older. Those things become less important.
Right.
You know, but it's still a driving force. I mean, I as much as we love working out, it's still in the back of our minds about how, but we want to be able to stay active and be strong, whatever age we end up living, because we, you know, Lee and I met, you know, as older. You know, we were both previously married in different lives, and if we had met earlier, we might not even been compatible. But now we're perfect. Lives, you know, work perfectly, and we want that to be for the long, you know, as long as possible too. You know, so
Well, you guys look amazing. I mean, you look like you're 20 plus years younger, and not only 20 plus years younger, but amazing looking people of that age. You look like an amazing 30-year-old that, and
well,
so
thanks.
definitely inspiring for sure. I mean, already after this conversation, I'm thinking I want to go work out
But
because
but
I have
yeah,
the energy and I'm
you know,
excited about starting to build some muscle.
but yeah, one thing I want to, you know, I mentioned, you know, I talked to my mom yesterday before this because I wanted to ask her about a couple of things, but I knew this, you know, my family, especially my mom's side, have always been more overweight,
Mhm.
but none of them really had any, you know, diabetes or heart issues or, you know, any of the things you would normally have related to being obese or, you know, and they didn't eat great diets. But I mean, they still cooked a lot. And so it wasn't a lot of processed stuff per se,
Right.
but still a lot of sweets and, you know, all, you know, lots of stuff and lots of foods. And our get-togethers, family get-togethers was always around tons of food and tons of, you know, deep fried stuff or, you know, everything. But they never really had a lot of those, you know, the normal markers you would have with eating that way. So genetically, I'm probably more disposed that way. But when I was talking to my mom, she had a bariatric surgery a few years ago,
Oh, wow.
and she lost a lot of weight. But was funny with that, and I didn't realize when I talked to her yesterday, because she's almost pretty much eating carnivore now too. And
Oh,
I don't think I can take any credit for that. Maybe some stuff I posted, you know, and over time. But it's funny that before she had her surgery, they don't talk about protein or how important it is, or maybe even putting them on a diet before they do that, unless they have to get down to a certain weight just to get the surgery, which does happen. Some people are too heavy to get the surgery. But I don't know. But they never tell them to, you know, go that way. But once they have the surgery, of course, they're pushing protein shakes because plus it's hard for them to get a lot of food in at a time, especially early on. But then they push protein and how important it is. I mean, they're still telling them to eat vegetables, but it's like, why not tell them before that? And then they might not need the surgery.
I know. You're absolutely right. Oh.
But now she is mainly, you know, eating from what I got from her yesterday. And she did tell me she's put on a little bit of weight. She kind of got, you know, which she didn't think would happen with the surgery. She got down to as low as she's ever been, you know, down
Wow.
pretty, very light for her. And she's trying to get back down. And right now she's a little frustrated, but I gave her some advice. It's the first time we've really talked about her diet, you know, because I'm not there. Here I can, you know, she lives in Ohio, so I don't see her, you know, but once a year, and usually we would kind of be lax. I'm not anymore. And I haven't been back since I went 100% carnivore, I don't think. And so I didn't always push it on them the way I probably should, like I have with my in-laws, who we've kind of converted to no,
Ow.
they're not carnivore, but they're definitely meat-based. And Leah went over there the other day and they got rid of almost everything in their pantry. I mean, she walked out there with 7, 8 bags and it was just beautiful.
A carnivore intervention.
My father-in-law, you know, he's had lots of joint issues and just, you know, and he's about to turn 80 this year.
Amazing.
And it sounds like they're doing pretty well. They're still, you know, they're a month in and they're skeptical about some things, but I've been talking to them about it for, you know, 6 years, you know, a lot about me. And sometimes I push, but now and they might tell you different that I'm pushing really
Undeniable.
hard. but
Oh,
I'm hoping they stick and they feel, and they're still worried about certain things, like lots of people are when they first cholesterol and
right.
different things and higher fat, and so they're easing into it, but just cutting out cereal and the processed stuff is just, I think it's going to be huge, and I'm so excited, and I'm glad. Seems like maybe somebody's starting to listen to me a little bit.
Wonderful. And, our friend Diane is, on Meet RX. She's 76 and looks incredible.
Oh,
Her,
she's 76.
yeah, she turned 76 maybe a month ago. And I mean, she's amazing. So I'm so
Yes.
excited for your in-laws. I mean, good for you and good for them. And so how about Leah? How did you said before she was already eating,
Well, she when we met, she was super lean, working out. I mean, she looked like, you know, and she still does, in my opinion. She might disagree, but she's always weeks away from looking like she could step on stage. She's got abs. She still has abs. I kill for her abs. And but she was, tons of vegetables, lean proteins, fish, chicken breast, egg whites, and a lot of vegetables. And she was strict as could be. And it's funny, when we met, I think we still both would once in a while have something, but we never did it in front of each other.
hilarious.
So like if I was going grocery shopping on Saturday to get my stuff and take it home for me and my son and stuff, and then I'd grab something, have my cheat meal if I was going to have one, and then go back over and see her. And and it was lots of times we didn't do that, but when I did, she didn't know about it, and she may have done something small too, but we didn't much because we were together all the time. So we were even stricter and stuff. But I don't know that it was better for us at that time. But she was eating super lean. She was doing great and feeling great, and she still did most of the time. But she a little bit before we went on that trip, she was starting to maybe feel a little bit of aches and pains, and and she's always had some anxiety, most stuff. And she said it was okay for me to talk about this a little bit, but yeah. So, and I recommended maybe switching it up a little bit. And when we went to Maui for the first time, we go to Costco. At that time, we would buy chicken and beef and stuff for most of the week, and then we could come. We come back. We always get a place with a kitchen and a grill, so we could make whatever. Even before we got soup, even the other times when we would have other stuff, we still had a place with a kitchen, so we could cook most of our meals because we still preferred to have our stuff. And she would get a bag of broccoli and maybe some other and chicken, and I would get my beef. And so this time she didn't. She decided not to. She was just going to eat the steaks that I grilled. And within 2 days, she was just feeling better. She had, jump out of bed and just, and she wasn't aching. And so she kind of stuck with it, more red meat. She still eats 3 meals a day most of the time. And, she still eats lots of fish, but she got rid of the chicken. The chicken seemed to not always do well. She was, those, once in a while she would get one of those Costco chickens.
Right.
I don't know what they put in that. I mean, but once she got rid of all the other stuff and just was eating mainly meat, and she'd have her apple, which was funny. I was giving her a hard time when she mentioned it because I give her, and Sean's, her first Meet RX meeting, she mentioned it to Sean. And of course, it's not a big deal, but I tease, and
Yeah.
it's not hurting her in any way. But where was that? But yeah, we got back, she would have that chicken, and then she would notice she'd get a headache.
Oh.
So she did it a couple of times. We finally realized it had to be that. So we got rid of that, so she had no more issues there at all. And so she's, just gradually, the anxiety is just amazing difference, for her, and especially with things the way they've been over the
Right.
last year and she's a teacher, and,
Oh.
and online and then back at school and back and forth. And and her workouts are even more, she says she has more energy and even more so, and no aches and pains. And even yesterday they had like a field day, and she's not normally a runner. I mean, she does just as much cardio as I do. She does it a little different than I do. I bought her that step mill so she does that. She still does about the same 40 minutes, but she does it all before she works out. And she usually does it on the stairs at a ridiculous pace. And, most people lean on the rails and stuff. She just goes, but she's not like a big runner and stuff. I mean, once in a while when we're hiking the mountain, she'll do a little jog just for, 100 yards, and then she'll run, and then we'll hike again. And we hike at a pretty good pace. But yesterday she was, they had like a field day, and she went out with the different groups because she's a special ed teacher. So she's got all the grades. She was out there running with them, and she didn't stop. And she said she couldn't believe how, and everybody's like, you must run all the time. But she doesn't. She's never been a runner.
Wow.
But she had no issue, and she thought she'd feel sore this morning. And she mentioned that we were working out this morning, that, I feel fine. She was surprised. I was too, because neither of us are big runners. I mean, we like to, we might do a sprint here or there or something, but yeah, we're not. We do a lot of other stuff in bursts and steady state cardio. So we have great, endurance, but not running. But yeah, she ran, I don't know how much yesterday during the day.
Wow, that is amazing. And I've heard, I know Raymond has said that too, that when he was carnivore, he was never a runner, but he suddenly was able to run, just like because of what he's eating, right? So what does you said she eats an apple, but what is her daily
Her
cuisine?
daily, usually she'll have, now she was always having usually bread, she liked to eat out. She's hungry after the workout. So she usually has, but she was having a fish, usually a leaner fish. Tilapia for a while, but she's kind of got away from that. Now it's some salmon usually. That's usually what she eat, or ground beef. Now I've got her trying to get her more red meat. So she now eats a lot of beef in the morning. And she was kind of worried that she was eating too much, and I told her she's not. But she still has that, sometimes she's learning. And that's why I asked her to get on there to meet RX and talk to some other, especially some of the women have been doing it for a while, and they helped her. She was on a meeting was it last Sunday? And I was listening in because they seemed to be okay with that. I wasn't getting involved, but, and I know everything she's going to say. I'm not going to get into what they said because there was a lot of stuff in there that, would be, I wouldn't want to share. But I think it was good to hear even some of the same things I was saying from other people that have been doing it as long as she has or longer, or, and just, so, and both of us came from that mentality of, controlling what we're eating and tracking what we're eating. I mean, she didn't track. She doesn't weigh what she eats, and she never did, because that was, that goes into disordered eating for her, I think.
Right.
They weigh everything. So she would eat, but she still was controlling the portion she was eating and allowing herself to eat. And she was still doing that, even cutting out, she would eat, before she started this, she was eating 10, 12 servings of vegetables, along with, and lots of variety, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, I don't know, just about anything, all the greens, a ton, so she would get, bloat, and, and that was the first thing she'd mention is, she would have no problem after she ate throwing on a bikini now. She wouldn't do that after she ate before, just because of all the vegetables and what they would do to her gut, And I hope she doesn't mind I said that, but
Right.
But
I was
still,
like
I
that
mean,
too. I mean, I was always eating as many vegetables as I could and just getting really bloated and anxious. And so send her my way, because I'm over 2 months into eating only the ribeye. So she's fearing the beef. We want to have her on the show. We want to interview her. She sounds like an extremely confident carnivore.
she is, and she's much better on camera than I am. But that's what she used to do for a living a long time ago. She was a theater major. She used to perform all over the world.
Send her on. We want more women. We have so many men, and there are plenty, obviously, on MeatRx. There are plenty of women carnivores. But in terms of the show, we want to hear more, because women. That's the thing with men, like you said, with the bodybuilding, that culture, that's been around for a lot longer. But people perceive women, and when I work in HR, and I tell all the ladies, it's all ladies, that I'm, almost 23 months into, sorry, yeah, 20, almost 23 months into carnivore now. And they're like, what? You're still eating that? And they're just shocked, and they think it's like not feminine because women are always eating lean chicken breast if they're eating any protein, and then they're having a salad,
Exactly.
right? With a
Yeah.
balsamic vinaigrette, right? And drinking a glass of Chardonnay. Like that's the whole like woman model. So they think I'm crazy, right? But then guess what? I used to bring in little packs of bacon to my team in the morning. I'd be eating my bacon, eating my steak back when I was still eating bacon, and I would pass out sticks of bacon, and they would all like very guiltily come and take a piece, and then they would
Yeah.
be like, they would be so happy, right? Because bacon made them so, it just lights your body craves meat. And so
Yeah.
they're depriving and controlling and eating lean cuisine and Weight Watchers microwavable meals. And even back then I had gotten Costco sells egg bites that are like, I won't eat that now, but they're little, ready-made warm
Yeah.
up. It's like eggs with bacon is one flavor. And then there's the other one with egg whites and like spinach and something like, red
Yeah.
peppers. And so I would go to Costco and I would buy the bacon version with the whole egg. And then my coworker would want me to buy her the egg white version because she's trying to lose weight. And I'm just like, you should eat the bacon version because it'll keep you full for hours, right? Those egg
Yeah.
whites aren't going to do this
Exactly.
for you.
No, you're gonna be hungry again in no time.
So we definitely would love to have Leah because we want to hear, strong, confident carnivore women, and just hearing and seeing her. I mean, she's gorgeous and
Yeah.
she's in great shape, great vitality. It's like we need more of that in the space,
Yeah. And all of them. I mean, and the people you've done so far, I mean, those are great. I mean, I always felt like a hard time getting the message across to people because they see how I look and they see how I work out and they discount the eating. And to me, the eating is the most important thing. And I just have a hard time getting that through to people. And like you said, most people don't know what I look like in my 20s.
Oh, your story.
And I didn't, I mean, not, and I was a good athlete, but it wasn't like in high school. I was always in good shape, and I had big legs and muscular legs, and I still do. But my upper body, I didn't look like I wasn't jacked, but I was always in great shape and looked pretty good. But I wasn't like super muscular or anything in high school, even. It doesn't come natural, I don't think. I had to work, hard on diet and, resistance training. I mean, you still have to build muscle. You do need to push your muscles.
When you
But
mentioned in your story at one point that when you were doing calorie restricted, that it took you a whole year to lose 80 pounds, but then when you switched to low carb, how long did it take you to lose the same? You said it was way shorter, right? To lose the same amount
yeah,
of
well, it was a little bit shorter. I don't remember exactly how short it was, and then I stayed right
hard,
around
right?
there.
If it
But it was much easier. I kept muscle and I actually added muscle, which they say you can't do.
Mm,
Supposedly, because I was still I was still eating pretty low cal. I was eating 1,800 to 2,000 calories a day, which is pretty low for somebody that's 200 pounds and as active as I was being by then. Because I was working out every day. I was, not at the beginning. I wasn't coaching, but I was playing football. A few months out of the year, 4 or 5 months, and practicing a couple of days a week, and along with raising my son and working and so that still wasn't a ton of calories and spread out over 6 meals. And so I did. No, I lost my train there. I get rambled sometimes here. I think I ramble on, but
no worries. I wanted to ask you too, though, because you talked about your, kind of your energy, your activities, your fitness, working out and sleep. But what about at work? What's your work performance like?
it's yeah, I have no issues. I mean, I'm an accountant is my main
Oh,
what I do, an operations manager, which nobody's ever guessed I'm an accountant. Even when I was in college, putting myself through college, nobody accountant or the guy setting the curve in class or any
Not
of
the
that stuff,
stereotypical accountant. We'll just say that.
No, but I work for a company where I'm an operations manager and do other things, and right now, because of the way our business is, I'm also doing all the warehouse stuff. So I'm doing way more of everything because we're down to, we can't. I've had to put a bunch of people on furlough. Unfortunately, it's horrible. But
Oh,
so I'm doing all the warehouse stuff too.
wow.
So that's where we're at with that, and so but I have tons of energy. I've got a stand-up desk I use
Oh,
and all that, so so it's great. I should say it's great. And one thing I should say is when I started Carnivore, I've now been able to keep my weight, even though I'm eating more, feel fuller, feel better. I've stayed about 10 pounds lighter than I was before that,
wow. 100.
pretty consistently. So I keep my weight, and I don't worry about it too much now. It's more about how I look and feel.
Mhm.
But I keep my weight between 170 and 180.
Wow. Interesting. And so, when you're working, I mean, at the gym, it's one, oh, I know you have your home gym, but when you're just like out at work and meeting with people, do they ask you about like what you eat, or do they just ask you about what your workout is?
Sometimes. I need
Oh,
to
you
do
gotta get,
something
yeah,
really
no
quick.
worries.
Let me mute it. I'll be back in just one.
Okay.
Sorry.
I
I actually
actually,
had some work. I forgot I had a copy repair guy coming in.
oh, no worries.
I heard him
I
beating
figured
on
out
the
how to
door.
pause it. I
I mean,
forgot I could pause the recording, so I just paused it.
oh,
But
oh,
we can wrap up. But I just want to say thank you so much. I mean, this story was so powerful, and it's going to help a lot of people. Can you still
yeah, I
hear?
want to.
Oh,
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me? I want to, just quick continuation of doing this. I mean, like I said, my family seems to do pretty well, but and one of the reasons I think it's going to be beneficial long term is both my grandparents on my mom's side both had dementia. They were into
oh,
their late 80s, early 90s, but they both had dementia. So that scares me. But I think this way of eating, from what I've seen and heard, should be a benefit. That's one of the huge things I do. And I'd like to also say, like all the people you've done so far, they've had guys and and the girls that those are the people that just need to keep talking. I mean, I'm going to try. I keep thinking I need to do more and push more, and I
yes.
do to a point. And I'm going to try. It's not my, I'm not a social media person, but I'm going to try to do a little bit more. But those people that have the other things, I mean, even if they're just getting great, but yeah, having all these health issues, it's just them telling their stories are huge. I mean, that's what, yeah, like I said with my in-laws, I finally felt like my father-in-law was. He seemed the last time we talked like he was more ready to maybe give it a little bit of a try. So what
Wow.
I did was I went to the Meet RX success stories and copy and pasted a bunch of ones that I thought would relate to him to a point. I mean, there's a hard to find a lot of people 80 years old because they're not on the computer doing stories anyway, even if
Right.
they were eating that way. So I mailed it to him because he doesn't get on the computer. He just, and I mailed them to him
Oh, you
to
mailed it.
read
That is so sweet.
because he does that when we go to visit and we come over or bring something or whatever. He mails us a thank you note, or he just
Oh,
writes us a note, and that's what he does, and it's sweet. And I wanted to do the same thing that way to send it to him, and I thought, well, maybe it'll help, and it seemed to make a big difference. And then they did. Him and his wife got on the computer and were reading other stuff,
that is so
and so
beautiful
that
because
was huge. So I want to tell everybody,
I love that you did
especially the
that.
ones the the joint stuff, the autoimmune stuff, the depression stuff, and it's just all that stuff is so huge and makes such a difference, more so than, somebody who, looks good in a picture.
I love that you've shared that, and especially what you're the having the courage to share, because I think a lot of us just kind of keep it under wraps because it makes us seem odd or weird, like, oh, you're so
No.
extreme because you're doing this. But it's like, you're so right. I love that you took that extra effort to mail the printouts to them so they could have access to this, because it's never too late. And I
Yeah.
absolutely, my goal is to get Diane to come on the show and to talk about, being 76 years old, because I've heard her share so many improvements
Yeah.
cognitively, emotionally, just everything. And she was a nurse, I believe, I think some kind of psychological nurse. And so she just had such a lifetime of suffering, and then finding it in her, in as she's in her 70s. And there are others on the platform. So I really love what you said, um, and the reminder that, it's not just about looking good and weight loss and
Yeah.
your body and your physique. There's so
Yeah.
many other benefits that we can't even, hundreds of other healing types of things that we've heard about. What would you say to somebody who's just considering this way of eating? Like, what advice would you give them?
To have a starting point, that makes sense to you, and follow it and give it a little bit. Don't, I mean, nowadays there's so many different things and different people are doing it this way and that way. Find it and give it a little time, a few months. Get to know yourself. Don't be afraid to eat. Of course, I like the beef. Just having that it's a good starting point. It can be, and then maybe you need to ease into it if you're coming from a standard American diet, so you might have to eat. But don't just, there's so much out there now that, one day fast, or then you go right into a 3-day fast, or I'm going to add fat and I didn't quite feel right. But you got to give your body a chance to figure it out and feel good before you start making tweaks or worrying about weight loss or energy. Give it, if you're doing it a month and you're still feeling totally horrible, maybe there's a little bit of a tweak there to be made. But just don't jump, give yourself the chance to adjust and get comfortable with it
That's great
before you
advice.
start playing around. And, that was the lucky thing when I was doing it. I didn't have a bunch of this or that, it's like, and I always try to stay consistent. And then, and don't be afraid to learn either, though. Research. Don't just go by, oh, this worked for that person. That's what I want to look like. I'm going to follow it exactly. You
Right.
may start that way, but don't think that you're that person, because there are enough slight differences that you may not quite work the same way.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. Thank you so much, Rich. I
I
am
hope that was good.
seriously, I am over the moon with this conversation.
Well, thanks. I'm
So
glad.
yes, thank you for coming on the show and for taking the time out of your very busy schedule and for forgetting about
I better,
the guy.
I better get to work. Yeah.
And I'll let you get to work, and thank you, but please
Thank
send
you.
Leah our regards, and tell her that we want her on the show. So
I'll let her
have a
know.
wonderful day. Thank you so much, Rich.
All right. Thank you.
Here. Bye bye.
Bye.
Don't hang up.